The story of Taiwan begins with water. A formidable body of water called the Taiwan Strait separates the island from the vast mainland of China. This strait is about 180 kilometers wide at its narrowest point. For centuries, this geographical barrier was not just a physical distance but a psychological one. It was a treacherous passage known for its strong currents and unpredictable weather. This natural moat allowed Taiwan to develop on its own terms for a very long time. The island remained a mystery to the Chinese empires for many centuries. It was a remote place, a frontier beyond the direct reach and concern of the imperial court in Beijing. Long before any Han Chinese settlers dreamed of crossing that strait, Taiwan was home to a diverse array of indigenous peoples. These were Austronesian peoples, part of a linguistic and cultural family stretching across the Pacific and Indian Oceans. They were related to the peoples of the Philippines, Malaysia, Indonesia, Madagascar. These tribes lived across the island from the fertile western plains to the rugged central mountains. They had rich and distinct cultures, languages, and social structures. They were hunters, farmers, and skilled artisans, living in harmony with the land they had called home for thousands of years. The indigenous peoples of Taiwan were not a single, unified group. They were composed of many different tribes such as the Amis, the Atayal, the Bunun, and the Paiwan, among others. Some practiced headhunting as part of their spiritual and social rituals, a fact that would later instill fear in would-be colonizers. Their presence is the foundational layer of Taiwan's history, a deep-rooted heritage that predates any external influence. Their legacy continues to be a vital part of modern Taiwanese identity, a reminder of a history that is distinct from the mainland. The Taiwan Strait, therefore, played a crucial role in shaping the island's destiny. It was a world apart, inhabited by peoples with a completely different heritage. The arrival of the first Chinese migrants would mark the beginning of a profound and often violent transformation, setting the stage for the complex relationship that would define the island's future and its relationship with the giant across the water. The first significant waves of Chinese migration to Taiwan began in the 17th century during the twilight of the Qing Dynasty. These were not state-sponsored expeditions but the desperate journeys of ordinary people. Settlers, mostly from the coastal provinces of Fujian and Guangdong, they faced famine, poverty, political turmoil on the mainland. They saw Taiwan as a land of opportunity, a wild frontier to build a new life. They crossed the dangerous strait in small junks, bringing agricultural skills, languages, customs. These early migrants were pioneers carving settlements on the western plains, often coming into conflict with the indigenous tribes over land and resources. Migration accelerated after the Ming fell to the Manchu-led Qing in 1644. Ming loyalists, led by the general Koxinga, retreated to Taiwan. They expelled the Dutch who had established a trading outpost on the island, and set up the Kingdom of Tungning. A Han Chinese regime ruled Taiwan for the first time. In 1683, the Qing conquered Taiwan, defeated Koxinga's grandson, and incorporated the island into the Qing Empire. For the Qing court, Taiwan was a strategic frontier, feared as a pirate or rebel base. The Qing initially tried to limit migration, fearing the island would become a haven for troublemakers. They set up formal administration but ruled lightly, focusing on the developed western plains and leaving the mountainous interior to indigenous tribes. The quarantine policy was hard to enforce against the tide of illegal immigration. Throughout the Qing era, Taiwan was a restless, often violent frontier. The saying, "Every 3 years an uprising, every 5 years a rebellion," tensions between different groups of Han settlers, tensions between settlers and the government, and most of all, tensions between Han settlers and indigenous peoples. Han settlers pushed eastward, claiming land for farming. This expansion caused displacement and assimilation of plains, indigenous tribes. By the late 19th century, Taiwan was integrated into Qing society and economy, but that integration was marked by struggle and subjugation of the original inhabitants. Taiwan's fate took another dramatic turn in 1895. China's Qing Dynasty suffered a humiliating defeat in the First Sino-Japanese War. Under the Treaty of Shimonoseki, the Qing ceded Taiwan to the Empire of Japan. The transfer shocked the island's inhabitants. They had been Qing subjects for over 200 years. Suddenly they were handed to a foreign master. Resistance rose. Local gentry and militias declared the Republic of Formosa. The Japanese military crushed the republic swiftly and brutally. Japanese colonial rule lasted 50 years until 1945. It was a period of profound transformation. Japan governed Taiwan as a colony. Its aim was to extract resources for the homeland. The early years meant harsh military rule and suppression of dissent. The administration was efficient but authoritarian. Taiwanese were treated as second-class subjects. Discrimination in education, discrimination in employment, discrimination in the legal system. A strict assimilation policy followed. Taiwanese were forced to adopt Japanese names, forced to speak Japanese, forced to practice Shintoism. Yet the era brought modernization. The colonial government invested heavily in infrastructure. They built railroads, they built ports, they built sanitation systems. They established a unified currency, standardized weights and measures, developed public health programs. Those programs fought cholera and malaria. Agriculture was transformed. Sugarcane production rose. Rice production rose for export to Japan. The island moved from a lawless frontier to a well-ordered, productive society, but largely serving colonial interests. The legacy is complex and ambivalent. On one hand, oppression, cultural suppression, economic exploitation. The Taiwanese had no political voice and were denied self-determination. On the other hand, modern infrastructure and institutions set Taiwan on a different path from mainland China. 50 years of separation created a distinct historical experience. It produced a generation with little connection to events in China, fostering a sense of difference. The end of World War II in 1945 brought an end to Japanese colonial rule in Taiwan. As an allied power, the Republic of China took control of the island. Chiang Kai-shek, the Kuomintang, or KMT for many Taiwanese, this was at first a moment of celebration. They believed they were being returned to their motherland after 50 years of foreign occupation, but this optimism quickly soured. The incoming KMT officials were seen as corrupt and pretty incompetent. They treated the Taiwanese with suspicion, viewing them as Japanized and disloyal. The KMT administration plundered the island's resources, which led to hyperinflation and eventually economic collapse. Tension exploded on February 28, 1947. A dispute between a government agent and a cigarette vendor sparked an island-wide uprising. The KMT responded with extreme brutality. Troops were sent from the mainland to crush the rebellion. It became known as the 228 Incident. Over the following weeks and months, between 10,000 and 30,000 people, including many of Taiwan's intellectual and social elite, were arrested, tortured, and executed. The massacre created a deep, lasting wound between mainlanders and islanders who had lived in Taiwan for generations. It shattered any illusion of a happy reunion with China. Meanwhile, a massive civil war raged on the mainland between Chiang Kai-shek's nationalists and the Communist Party led by Mao Zedong. By 1949, the Communists had the upper hand. Facing defeat, Chiang Kai-shek made a momentous decision. He retreated to Taiwan, bringing with him the entire ROC government, its gold reserves, and nearly 2 million loyal followers, including soldiers, civil servants, and business leaders. From Taipei, declared the provisional capital, Chiang vowed to retake the mainland. In Beijing, Mao proclaimed the founding of the People's Republic of China and claimed to be the sole legitimate government of all China, including Taiwan. That split in 1949 created a situation that still persists today. For nearly 4 decades, Taiwan was governed under a strict regime of martial law. The Kuomintang, or KMT, dominated every aspect of political and social life. Freedom of speech and the press were, well, heavily curtailed. Any discussion of Taiwanese independence or dissent against the government was brutally suppressed. The state's narrative was singular. The Republic of China was the real China, and the people of Taiwan were Chinese citizens temporarily exiled, just waiting to reclaim the mainland. This official identity was enforced through the education system and state-controlled media. However, beneath the surface, a quiet transformation was taking place, fueled by economic success and a growing desire for political freedom. The shift towards democracy began in the 1980s. President Chiang Ching-kuo, who was Chiang Kai-shek's son, recognized the old system was unsustainable. He started to loosen political controls, which eventually led to the lifting of martial law in 1987. This opened the floodgates for political change. Opposition parties were legalized, leading to the rise of the Democratic Progressive Party, DPP. The DPP advocated for a stronger Taiwanese identity, separate from China. The 1990s saw rapid democratic reforms, including direct presidential elections. In 2000, Taiwan had its first peaceful transfer of power when DPP's Chen Shui-bian was elected president. This democratic transition fundamentally reshaped Taiwanese identity. As people gained freedom to express themselves, a distinct sense of being Taiwanese rather than Chinese grew stronger. This identity is rooted in the island's unique history, indigenous heritage, experience under Japanese rule, separation from the mainland in 1949, and its journey to democracy. Today, a large majority identify primarily as Taiwanese. They see their society as having its own distinct culture and political values, centered on democracy, human rights, and the rule of law, values that contrast with the authoritarian system of the People's Republic of China. This evolution is at the heart of tensions across the Taiwan Strait. The government in Beijing views Taiwan as a renegade province that must be reunified by force if necessary. China's One China principle is a non-negotiable cornerstone of its foreign policy. Yet for the 23 million people of democratic Taiwan, being absorbed by an authoritarian state is unacceptable. Despite political friction, deep economic and cultural ties connect the two sides. This creates a complex, volatile relationship, one of interdependence and deep-seated rivalry, where a shared past collides with two very different present realities and opposing visions for the future.